Warning: the following video contains explicit language which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Hello and welcome to this video. This is a breakdown of episode 1 of The Path, a Rabbit Story, part 2. This 3-part series is it's kind of a primer. In the last episode, the part 1 for the breakdown of this episode, I said it was kind of a preview or setting up for season 2. I misspoke. It's actually a primer for a couple episodes within episode 2 or season 2. And it is, there's a lot of themes, a lot of stuff that carries off into the first novel. I have the second novel, haven't had a chance to read it yet. So, with all that being said, without further ado, let's get into this thing.
A professional fighter. Lucy had a couple weight classes on the pro, but still, she's a killer. I can turn on the air conditioning if you like.
Well, won't that mess up the recording?
We can take a break, wait for it to cool down.
No, I'll be fine.
Okay. So, I went to the meeting.
I fucking knew it.
I told you I was going.
Yeah, and I told you not to.
Turns out I really am the boss of me.
Yes. I have had or seen conversations just like that between my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law. It's kind of hilarious.
Well, that was stupid. Those people are fucked.
I don't know. I mean, they're definitely fucking weird, but I think they might actually be harmless.
Who the fuck is harmless anymore?
Also, in case you haven't figured it out, there's a lot more profanities in this particular 3-episode iteration of Rabbits. Or in the path. So yeah, definitely justifies the content warning at the beginning.
Well, I'm going back there tonight. They said they're going to show me something.
No way you are.
Yes, way I am.
No. Look, V, ever since that thing with Noah, you're not really thinking straight.
Yeah, me and my wife have had that discussion when I'm hell-bent on doing something. And yeah, me and my wife have had that conversation.
Thing? With Noah? You mean, that tiny little thing where he didn't recognize me, like, at all after we'd been in love and inseparable for over a year? I feel like I'm thinking absolutely straight.
Actually, when intense feelings, whether they be joy, love, hate, despising somebody, those strong feelings, you may think you're thinking straight. Your brain is telling you you're thinking straight, but the emotion is doing a majority of the thinking.
Oh, yeah?
Well, mostly straight, anyway. Yeah? Lucy's right to be skeptical. She cares about me.
And skepticism is a good thing, but it shouldn't prevent you from going on adventures, to be honest with you.
And she was the one who had to pick me up after Noah went back to London. He was always going to be going back, but the thing is, he was supposed to take me with him. What he wasn't supposed to do was look into my eyes more than a year after we'd started seeing each other and act like he didn't recognize me.
Yeah, I imagine that would be heartbreaking at a minimum. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. There's a whole lot of adventure and stuff squeezed into this episode, in these 3 episodes. There's not as much character development because you've got 3 basically 25-minute episodes versus in season 1 you had 10 episodes that averaged about 45 minutes. So yeah, you don't, this is kind of, you're getting straight into the action. It's more of a short story than it is a season or a novel. It's it's hard literary counterpart.
A week later, he was on a plane. 2 days after that, he was killed in a freak car accident.
So, that begs the question, is car accidents with fatalities gotten to be to a point where it's such a common occurrence that you have to specify a freak car accident as opposed to just a regular car accident with a fatality?
He was only 27 years old.
And that, to me, is kind of a nod or hats off to the Forever 27 Club, which has alumni such as Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, Kurt Cobain, people that died at the age of 27. So yeah, it's, to me, it's that kind of a nod of appreciation or nod of acknowledgement to the Forever 27 Club.
So what am I doing investigating this group of characters who requested that I drive out to the middle of nowhere and wear a blindfold while I sit and wait at a bus stop in the middle of the night? Well, it's because I believe those people may have had something to do with what happened to Noah.
So yeah, this is really hard to comment on without spoiling. Yeah, let's just say she's going down the right path.
Not the getting on a plane to London part, like I mentioned earlier, that was scheduled. No, it wasn't that. It's just... Okay, here goes. I think those people may have had something to do with the Noah forgetting I ever existed part of all this, and that's the part that's been making it hard for me to sleep through the night lately.
I know from personal experience, this isn't as extreme as in the in-universe story that's going on right now, but when my wife goes to visit friends, she has friends out of state that she goes and visits. When she's gone, she'll be gone, 3-4 days, sometimes a week, depending on how much time she has. And it's usually during the summer. And I know when she's gone and I don't have that other person in bed, it is very difficult for me to sleep. Sleeping by myself is my brain doesn't handle it real well.
I had no idea who this group of people were or what they were all about, but I found a phone number with the Seattle area code in some of Noah's things. It had been scribbled on the inside cover of a small journal he'd started carrying around near the end. Along with the phone number, there were a series of strange symbols, and beside the symbols, Noah had written 2 words: the path.
Okay. As somebody who's also a Star Wars fan, when I talk about strange symbols and you don't actually see them because it's an audio podcast, there's a language in Star Wars that is called Arabic. And the symbols, when it talks about arcane symbols and stuff, that's what I think of. You can do a Google search. It's kind of like symbols and things from our Latin alphabet and our the Arabic number system that we use, but it's kind of modified and twisted. That's what I think of, because to me, that Star Wars written language is, to me, that's kind of has that same feel to it.
I called the number. There was no answer. But a few seconds later, I received a text message from the number on my phone. It was a date, time, and location. A coffee shop.
Yeah, it's kind of cool and kind of creepy. Though I have to admit, there have been times that I have called. I've been out doing stuff, and I've called my wife, and she's been busy doing something else, so she doesn't answer the phone, but she'll send me a text message back within a couple minutes going, hey, I'm busy, blah, blah, blah. Call back at this time or whatever, or I can meet you here, meet you there. So, but under these circumstances, that's just kind of creepy.
5 minutes after meeting Manera and Brenner in a coffee shop, I could tell they were into some mind scrubber type business. Hypnosis, neurolinguistic programming, Scientology adjacent shit for sure.
Which is interesting because I know that the Church of Scientology has its detractors, and I don't know enough about it to have an opinion one way or another, but I've talked to a lot of people that have been affiliated, that have left that church, that definitely will tell you they're batshit crazy.
The first time I met them, they were dressed in black jeans and matching dark green jackets. Expensive, but not designer stuff. They were well put together, but it looked like everything they were wearing was brand new.
See, for me, I don't know. I'm the kind of person that even if I had $1 million or $1 billion to buy clothes and stuff with, I would probably still wear just plain old blue jeans and t-shirts and off the rack stuff. I don't think I'd ever get into the whole expensive clothing or designer clothing thing.
Too new. I could tell right away that Brenner was in charge. Manera seemed nice-ish. Brenner was dangerous.
It kind of gives you that good cop, bad cop type of energy.
We met for 10 minutes or so. They didn't tell me anything about themselves. They just asked a bunch of weird questions, stood up, and handed me a list of instructions. They said if I wanted to learn more, to follow every instruction to the letter. Miss anything, and you learn nothing. I'd asked Lucy to tag along, to keep an eye on me and eavesdrop as much as possible from an adjacent table. After Brenner and Manera left, Lucy and I made our way back to the studio to discuss.
You're serious about this shit?
Yeah, what?
What? Those people.
What about them?
Well, there's no way Noah was hanging. They're like NLP death hippies or something.
I like that. I love the term death hippies because it's such a having memories of the mid to late 70s growing up. Yeah, that whole thing, death hippies, is just, I find that amusing.
So no offense, but Noah was kind of...
Don't say it.
Basic.
I told you not to say it.
Cute as fuck, I'll grant you, but not interested in those, like, weirdos.
Wow, thanks for that.
And that is a good friend to throw some shit out like that, just to go, hey, your boyfriend's a good boyfriend and all, but he's basic. And that is the honesty of a good friendship.
I'm kidding, mostly.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, though, what makes you think that Noah had anything to do with these desert death cult-looking motherfuckers?
Okay, so let me back up. When I first met Noah, he was fun and easygoing and normal.
Isn't that what I said?
Zip it.
Fine.
And things were great. We were just about to move in together and more. It was really good. But then things started to change. It was right after he'd started working on his final project, an article about astral projection and extreme belief.
Okay.
Something happened.
Now, the concept of astral projection, for me personally, it's just something that plays well in good science fiction, good fantasy, and stuff like that. But I don't really think that it's a real thing. Now, there are psychoactive chemicals that will allow you to explore internally your mental processes, your ego and stuff like that. But I would not consider that astral projection of any kind.
He became obsessed. He'd lose time and focus. He started to act differently around me.
How so?
He became distant, stressed. It was clear that something was bugging him about the story, but when I asked him about it, he'd just shrug it off and do his best to try and act normal. But one night, after we'd had more than quite a few drinks, he opened up about something.
What?
The thing is if you're close enough to somebody, like my wife can intuitively pick up things like if I'm not feeling good or if I did something stupid to hurt myself and I'm trying to hide it. She may not suss out exactly what's wrong, but she knows I'm hiding something. That comes with good, solid relationships.
He told me about a meeting he'd had with somebody, a man he met in a pub somewhere. He said that this was the event that started it all, that changed the direction of his article.
Oh, the astral projection story?
Yeah. I mean, I think so.
I really, really like Lucy. She's the kind of friend that everyone needs.
What? I don't think that was all of it. I mean, maybe that's where the conversation started, but apparently that's not where it ended up.
Okay.
But, okay, just listen. So, Noah meets this guy, and he doesn't know much about astral projection, from what Noah told me. In fact, the guy probably doesn't believe any of that stuff is real.
Who does?
But he does tell Noah something.
What?
Something he swears to make Noah keep secret.
Noah did tell this guy that he was a journalist, though.
The thing is I grew up in a house, and I was learned something that was ingrained into me from as far back as I can remember, is you never keep secrets from your spouse. In this case, it would be boyfriend, girlfriend, but, you don't intentionally keep secrets from them.
Oh, right.
Of course. I mean, I think he did.
And that he was researching a story.
Just let me finish telling it, okay?
Okay, well then tell it.
So this guy was really drunk, apparently, and Noah said he had a feeling that the man was sharing something he probably shouldn't be sharing.
Which was what?
Information about a highly secretive group of people who might be able to help Noah with his article.
And who are these highly secretive people?
Well, now that's the big question.
See, the question that I come up with is, was this guy actually drunk and letting slip out this information? Or was he posing and playing drunk in order to intrigue Noah, to make Noah more interested in it?
I'm not sure. It was something about the power of coincidence or symbology or something.
Now, coincidence, I believe in coincidences. They happen all the time. I don't trust coincidences, but they do happen.
It had something to do with his handbill covered in strange symbols.
Do you have it?
Yeah.
See, that is something I enjoy, is she's like, yeah, I have this, handbill thing. And you hear the paperwork, the papers, her ruffling through papers in the background. For me, that just makes the story that much more immersive.
Okay, so this is witchy, but it's probably nothing.
Well, it looks like something to me. Plus, it just feels...
It's fucked up.
Sure, yeah, I guess.
How the hell were these people supposed to help Noah with his article about extreme belief or whatever?
I think it was because their beliefs were extremely extreme.
How?
And yeah, that's... You can get really tied up into this whole thing on extreme things and piquing curiosities, and it gets kind of crazy.
Though.
They believed they'd found a path to another world. The path to another world. It sounds pretty out there, I know. But Noah wasn't the type of person to fall for extravagant claims or delusions. For him...
And yeah, this... Like I said, we're already at a boil as far as the drama in the story goes, and it only gets more intense here. You got a couple cool down spots coming up, but for the most part, we're slowly ramping up.
To get involved with these people, he would have needed proof, and proof was exactly what I felt I needed as well, and that's why I ended up sitting blindfolded at that bus stop for a second time. Although that second time, I didn't bother with a see-through blindfold. I figured whatever was going to happen was going to happen.
And you already found out through the first encounter that if they wanted you hurt or dead, that would happen. So yeah, at that point you might as well just go, hey, look, let's do this.
After they picked me up at the bus stop, we drove for about 15 minutes in silence. When we finally pulled over and parked, the man called Minera removed my blindfold, and the three of us stepped out of a dark gray four-door Tesla sedan.
See, what I don't understand is, well, I do understand it, but it depends how you look at it. If they're in Seattle, and she already knows Seattle. She's a resident there, so she knows Seattle. And they're driving around Seattle, so why blindfold her? Unless, to get where they're going, you have to go down certain streets at certain times at a certain speed, which they don't want her to know at this point in the story. So yeah, you got to weigh out. You have to weigh it out to see, how it is, what's going on.
Me, Minera, and the woman called Brenner. The audio you're about to hear begins when we step out of the car. We were a block or so away from the Pike Place Market.
I have to go on a tangent here. Like I've said in other videos, my mom was born and raised in Seattle, Washington. And as kids, we would go on occasion and visit family up there. I found out that if it can be bought or sold, legality has nothing to do with it, but if it can be bought or sold, you can find it on Pike Street Market. And it's just wonderful. A side story to that is I worked with a guy at TDC that was a World War II reenactor. And him and his girlfriend had went to Washington State and went to Pike Street Market, and he found an authentic World War II medic's bag. So he bought it, came back, flew back to Texas. And he was going through it once he got to Texas, and he found like 4 or 5 vials, still good, of morphine, which he immediately took in and gave to us. It turned into, he went in, made an appointment, saw his doctor, and went, look, I bought this, I found this, I don't want to go to jail. So yeah, that's just kind of a side story on that.
It was just after 7 p.m. Where are we going? They led me into a vintage clothing store. I followed them through the store to the back, where there were 3 changing rooms. While Brenner consulted her small notebook, the woman working behind the counter called toward the back to see if we needed help. Something in Brenner's notebook finally convinced her that the middle change room was what she was looking for.
So it makes you wonder if the store clerk is part of this cabal, or if she's a civilian, if she's just an innocent in the whole thing.
She pulled me inside the change room and pulled the curtain shut behind us. Monero went up to speak with the woman behind the counter.
Here, dip your finger in this.
What is it?
It's part of what we're doing, just trust me.
I don't know. My natural inclination is when someone says, just trust me, don't.
Hurry.
Brenner handed me a small glass vial filled with a viscous liquid. It was the color of amber, and it was filled with flecks of ash or something. It smelled waxy and kind of musky.
To me, that kind of sounds like a mixture of honey and beeswax with maybe fire ash or something mixed into it. I have friends that are Wiccan. I have a couple friends that are Dianic Wiccan. And they use similar mixtures in some of their rituals and ceremonies.
I was instructed to dip my finger into the liquid and then duplicate the figures Brenner had begun drawing in the air. I figured I'd come this far, and the weird liquid wasn't burning my finger or anything.
What are we doing?
Shh. Just follow my lead.
We performed 6 or so visual shapes at least a dozen times in a row, and then we stepped out of the change room. Monero was standing there when we exited.
Ready?
We're primed.
Then lead the way.
We stepped out of the clothing store and just started walking and walking. I was feeling strangely elated. I felt like I was finally moving closer to figuring out what had happened to Noah.
I don't think elated would be the feeling that I would be having at that point, to be honest with you.
We followed Brenner for hours as she moved up and down seemingly random streets and alleys, often turning around and forcing the 3 of us back the way we came. There didn't appear to be any rhyme or reason to what we were doing, but we just kept doing it. The entire time, Brenner was checking her notes and occasionally drawing strange symbols both in the air, like we'd done in the changing booth, and on the walls and sidewalks using a thick piece of chalk. The symbols were simple, similar to the images on the front of the flyer Noah had been given. They reminded me of ancient alchemy or something.
Yeah, now I'm going to tell you kind of a side story again. When I was in high school, I went through a real big H.P. Lovecraft phase. And I purchased a copy of the fictitious book, The Necronomicon, that H.P. Lovecraft created. And me and a friend of mine would just randomly go through the town we lived in with chalk, and we would draw the symbols, the arcane symbols and stuff that were in the Necronomicon just to mess with people. So yeah, that kind of sparked that memory.
At one point, Monero stopped, and we followed suit. We were standing in a narrow alley in front of what appeared to be an abandoned car. On the rear window of the car, a Buick Skylark, someone had written a series of numbers in pink lipstick. 2 numbers were set atop 2 sides of a vertical arrow, and 2 other numbers on a horizontal arrow that crossed the vertical arrow in the middle. It looked like some kind of compass. The numbers were as follows, from the top moving clockwise: 119, 96, 42, and 11. Monera mentioned that the numbers had been placed there by what he called the advance team.
And once again, we get this the cars in the background, like they're actually on a city street.
I asked him what he meant by that, but he ignored my question. Brenner looked over the numbers, checked something in a small moleskin notebook, and smiled.
We're close.
So you're really not going to tell me who wrote these numbers?
Let's get moving.
North first.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
We started walking
7.
north. Monera was in the lead. He was counting his steps. Once he reached 119 steps, he turned and started walking east. After 96 steps, we turned south. You get the idea. The final 2 sets of steps led us into an ATM vestibule. A few seconds after we'd stepped inside, a man entered the vestibule. He was tall, with long red hair. He wore a black leather motorcycle jacket over a Beatles t-shirt.
The Beatles, I like the Beatles. And that whole combo of a Beatles t-shirt and a leather jacket's just kind of cool. Especially when it's revealed what's on the t-shirt.
The 4 Beatles faces from the inner sleeve of the White Album. I couldn't believe it. The man was my cousin. He said he'd been thinking about calling me all day and that it was really weird to run into me. We spoke for a few minutes and then he used the ATM and left. As soon as the door had closed, Brenner turned to Monera and asked if he recognized the song that was playing in the vestibule. He did, and so did I. It was an instrumental or Muzak version of Dear Prudence by the Beatles.
Which is a really good song. I believe it's off the White Album. They referenced the White Album. So I think, I'd have to double check, but I think this, and there's another Beatles song they referenced that is also off the White Album.
Brenner opened the door, and the 3 of us stepped back out onto the sidewalk. As soon as we were outside, a somewhat drunken woman bumped into us. Her friend grabbed her and then apologized and scolded her as they walked away. She said, "Watch where you're going, Prudence."
And that is also an eerie coincidence.
Monera turned to Brenner and nodded. We followed the 2 women for a couple of blocks. When they finally turned down a side street, Monera pulled us beneath the awning of a nearby record store. Brenner noticed something in the display window, something about the number of records or the band names or something. The White Album was in there among a bunch of other records on display, but I'm not sure that had anything to do with anything. Brenner checked her notebook and turned to Monera.
It should be just around the corner.
What's around the corner?
We're here, Monera. Let's go.
Yeah, that would be me. I'd be like, look, what's around the corner?
Go where? They continued to ignore most of my questions as Brenner led us around the corner onto another street and finally pointed at something.
For me, that would be infuriating. To get my questions ignored like that, I think I would be... I don't know if I'd be too scared to get mad or too excited to get mad or just too mad to get mad. Don't know.
There, across the street. You see the newsstand?
Is that new? I was here last week. That was a shoe store.
Go buy a copy of a news magazine.
Okay. Which one? At that moment, a car drove by. The Beatles song Rocky Raccoon was blasting from the open passenger side window. Brenner checked her watch.
It doesn't matter which news magazine you choose, but you have to hurry. You have less than 3 minutes.
Well, what if there's a line?
Steal it.
I'm not going to do that.
If you don't hurry, you might not make it back in time.
In time for what?
Just go. Now.
Yeah, I hate when people do that. And on Monera side of the coin, they're pushing a time code or a time limit that they have, so there's really not time to explain. So you've got to kind of at this point sit back and look at both sides of the coin.
So I ran over to the newsstand. There was nobody else waiting to buy anything, but it felt like it took longer than 3 minutes for me to purchase a copy of Time magazine. I rushed back across the street to the ATM where Brenner and Monera were waiting as fast as I could. I suddenly had a whole bunch of questions for the 2 of them, but when I made it back there, Brenner and Monera were gone. it looked like I was going to have to wait to ask my questions. The most pressing of which was related to the fact that the person on the cover of Time magazine, Time's Person of the Year, was Steve Jobs, who had apparently just celebrated his 66th birthday.
On a side note, in the real world, Steve Jobs died from cancer, I believe, when he was 56. So yeah, he's on this magazine or in this alternate universe or parallel dimension, he lived at least another 10 years.
You've been listening to The Path, a rabbit story. I'm Veronica Dale. Stay safe.
So, I hope everyone enjoyed this. This is, like I said, these are like adventure concentrate. They are squeezing 3 25-minute episodes. They're squeezing basically a season of content. So yeah, it's pretty good. So let's call this good. Next week we'll be starting episode 2 of The Path. And until then, be good, have fun, take care, peace.